Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Hey, TCS Nation. Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, session number 3. This is Mark Franco, your host. Alongside me is my co-host, Chris Legates. Today we have the honor and privilege of interviewing Sam Lopes, head women's soccer coach, Providence College, D1. We're talking Friartown. In addition to a plethora of topics we cover, you're going to want to stay tuned and see why Britney Spears comes up. Also get Coach Lopes' take on books versus magazines. This one goes on for a little bit, so sit back and relax. Hey, Sam, welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast. We hope you find the TCS Nation studio comfortable and to your liking. And by studio, I mean my house, Chris's house, and your office. Welcome.
Well, I'm glad to be on.
Excellent. Hey, let's dive right in. Sam, can you give us and the listeners some details on your background, maybe starting from as a player into where you are currently being head coach as a Friar?
Yeah, I grew up in Fall River, Mass. So back in the day when I played, Premier Soccer wasn't all that big. So we played for local Portuguese clubs. And that was really my, I guess for a lack of a better way of saying it, my youth soccer experience. And then ended up at Quinnipiac with a good friend of mine. Was kind of facilitated by a local high school coach in New Bedford who just recommended the program. Went to Quinnipiac, and that's where really things started to take off. Enjoyed my time there. Started getting involved at the youth level while I was still playing college soccer. Obviously, any kind of money when you're a college student is good money, so that was good money at the time. And once I graduated, started coaching even more. Worked with actually our friend here, Mr. Legates, at St. Joseph's College, now known as University of St. Joseph's, at a local D3 school in Connecticut. Yep. Spent a few years there while still doing the club scene, directing a lot of different things that academic football club offered at the youth level. Moved on to D2 at Southern Connecticut, spent a handful of years there, came to Providence as an assistant, and then took the head coaching position at the University of New Hampshire. When this position opened up, it just made sense to come back, considering I grew up 25 minutes away from here. So now I'm here at Providence, but it's been a long but very rewarding journey. It's been going on 14 years now to get to where I'm at, and wow. I wouldn't have changed the journey one bit, because I think experience and the people you work with and for is the best learning tool.
Got it. So last season was your first season as head coach, going into your second season this coming fall, correct?
Yeah, my first season as a head coach here got hired sometime in April. So there was very little time spent with the current team in what's considered our non-traditional season. Had maybe a handful of days with them, so spent a few training sessions with them. We ended up picking up some local exhibition match just to kind of get a feel for each other, and then they had to prepare for their final exams, and they were off on summer break. So this past season was my first year. It's coming up on a year now in April that I've been the new head coach here at Providence.
Wonderful. And now to my esteemed colleague and co-host, Chris Legates.
Well, thank you so much for that, Mark. Sam, my friend, it's so great to have you on the podcast. We go back so far, and God, it feels, you said 14 years. We've probably been friends for 20 years, so it's great to have you here today. On the road, we spent so much time, so, the stories are endless. We'll try not to bore people with them as much, but, as somebody who's been working with you for such a long time and seeing how far you've come now and going into your second year at Providence, Big East Soccer, 9-8-2 in your first year, qualified for the Big East tournament. You were the 5th seed and lost to Marquette 2-0 in the quarterfinal. Talk a little bit about that season and wrap up what you think about the past and what you're looking for going forward to the future.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to be doing this, especially from having Chris involved. What people may not know, uh, you have to remember where you came from. I wouldn't be where I am today if Chris didn't pull me aside on some field when we were on in a high school preseason and said, "Hey, you want to come work with me at St. Joe's College?" And I distinctly remember the conversation. Said, "Me, coach girls soccer? Are you crazy?" So he is someone who has taught me a lot about the women's game, and so it's an honor to be doing this, knowing that someone who kind of paved the way for me. Um, but yeah, with Providence, I think it was a situation where when you're an assistant here before, you're familiar with the league, you're familiar with the potential, certainly the players. So coming in, kind of had a cheat sheet, so to speak, even though I didn't really have too much of an offseason. And the Big East is super competitive. I think some of the colleagues within the league are extremely talented coaches. But I felt that there was a lot of talent here, and a new voice, a new philosophy, a new direction could go a long way. We were picked ninth out of 10 teams. So, it wasn't as if we were the philosophy or the vision that I had within the program was shared by too many. But we did finish 9-8-2. We finished at the top half of the table. It was a very rewarding season. I think a massive step in terms of establishing what we want the culture to exist within the program. I guess an identity on and off the field. So I think an important step, a good season. I wouldn't say a great season, but a good season. Certainly maybe a great season in other people's eyes, considering the lack of success the program's had in the past. And motivated for next year, but I think next year will present its challenges in itself. But I think we're certainly optimistic about the success we can have going forward.
In February, you announced that you have 6 recruits coming in. You have the privilege and the experience of coaching at every level of college soccer, 3, 2, and 1, and actually it being a club, running a club as well. How do you tell players, student athletes, and how do you gear them towards the direction in which they can play in? Are they Division III athlete? Are they Division II athlete? And in your case, you just signed 6 Division I athletes. Obviously, you guys are out all over the country recruiting and internationally as well. What kind of process do you go through in identifying players to say, okay, this is the level that they can play at?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, what our sport, obviously biased as we all are, is I think the greatest sport. But I think it's also unique in the sense that I think every youth soccer player can certainly play collegiate soccer. I am not one to say somebody is a D3, a D2, or D1 level. Because I think there's D3 programs that can certainly compete with D1 programs, certainly D2 programs that can compete with D1 programs. When you have over 300 some odd Division I programs, I can't really say, well, she's a D1 player, because especially for me, and even with you now at St. Joseph's, who is winning consistently 11, 12, 10 games, there's a lot of D3 programs that are, some would argue, a lot better than D1. I think for me, there's an element of evaluating, first of all, do they fit our style and they can handle the demands of the conference? Mm-hmm. So that's certainly an important piece to the evaluation process. But at the same time, I think it's all about finding the right fit. And when I say the right fit, it's geographically, it's academically, it's what is the philosophy within the department for the women's soccer program, the philosophy within the women's soccer program, certainly the type of commitment. The philosophies at D3 to D2 to D1 do vary a bit. So you may have a highly touted player who's D1, but doesn't want the full year rigors of training at the D1 level because academics is important. Maybe wants to be a dual sport. So to me, it's, you got to really first find the player that can handle the demands of the conference or the type of teams you play against, but also fits your style. That starts the process. I always say with recruiting, there's a difference between evaluation and actually recruiting. Evaluation is easy. The player's good or not. You know what I mean? Can they play the game based on your vision? That's what makes our sport unique. But then the recruiting part is academically, can they handle the demands of the particular institution you work at? Do they fit the type of culture you want within your program? What's their character like, mentality? So I think those are all things that go into the recruiting side of things. The evaluation starts it, but it's really more about the recruiting where you learn really who's the right fit. But I'm not one of those that says D1, you can't play D1 or D2 or D3. I think it's more about you don't have the ability to play at the level I'm currently coaching at. But that may not be the case for the next Division I school or D2 or D3.
Mark.
Okay, so as you mentioned, Sam, you're D1. Can you speak to our listeners and kind of provide, I know you touched on it a little bit, but expand a little bit more on the pros and cons of playing at D1 and maybe even D2, D3, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, I think instead of the D1, D2, 3, I think I would just say the pros of being a student athlete. There's nothing wrong with being a student, but I think the experiences, the life skills you develop as a student athlete, I think it helps with excelling as a student, but it also, I think, prepares you for the next chapter once your playing days are over. Let's be honest, the ball's going to lose its air at some point for a female soccer player.
True.
So your education, your experience is extremely important. I think if we want to just touch up on the different levels, I think Division I, depending on the type of institution you go to, the experiences could be a bit more rewarding in terms of where you get to go to, in terms of flights, cities, away trips, which obviously teams enjoy thoroughly, where maybe D2, D3 schools, it could be day trips. Resources where it allows certain programs can offer their student athletes a bit more than maybe another school who doesn't have as much of resources. But to me, overall, the big umbrella of being a student athlete, I highly recommend, because I think even in the business world, I think people who are looking to hire new people to work in their particular area, student athletes, I think, offer a lot because of the experiences they have during their college journey.
Right. Makes sense. Also, sticking with the Division I, II, and III, can you also speak to the audience and perhaps to parents as well, the financial aspects as it relates to them and also from your side as well?
Yeah, I think the financial piece is obviously a massive decision for a parent. At the end of the day, every parent's going to tell you, I want my daughter to go where she's going to be happy, she's going to get a good education, she's going to get looked out after, that's kind of consistent across the board. But then it comes down to the financial piece, where obviously D3, no scholarships, athletic scholarships anyway. Division II's got some, it's not as much as D1, but it's certainly, depending on where you are, it could be fully funded, not fully funded. And obviously Division I has the most that it can offer. But again, depending on the institution, maybe they don't have the full complement. So Division I, certainly that's a carrot, I think, that can be used a little bit, where getting an education is obviously a priority, but if it can be assisted because of athletic ability, kids are going to gravitate towards it. It's interesting going from D3 to D2, D1, in all my experiences, I find now that parents will explore the Division I avenue, but then they'll go right to Division III for whatever reason, unless the finances are extremely important, primarily because there's a lot of D3 programs that provide quality of play, but then obviously the philosophy is heavily weighed on the education. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, if we can't get a scholarship at the Division I level and a good education, then let's just consider the D3, where for whatever reason, right or wrong, at least the type of kids we recruit, they hardly ever are looking at those D2 schools.
And do you think time management plays a factor in that?
Well, I think time management at the Division I is certainly a big factor. For example, this past fall, we had a trip where we left Wednesday morning. We didn't get back till Sunday at 1 a.m.
Wow.
So Again, that goes into the philosophy. When you're playing, like, for example, in the Big East, and you've got programs that are in major cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, Milwaukee, you would go to Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, it's, those aren't, obviously, you're not getting on a bus or cramming people into a van and get into a 10-hour bus ride, So
Right.
Those trips, you're gone for a handful of days. So it does require good time management skills. Now, with us and most departments, you do have a good academic support system that serves as a bridge between the athletics and the academics, where there's hopefully a system in place at every institution that feels it works for them, and fluent communication in terms of when a certain student athlete will be departing, missing a certain class. But at the end of the day, it's the student athlete's responsibility to make up that work and stay ahead of the game with their academics. Where D3, D2, it's day trips. Once in a while you'll get an overnight, but for the most part, there's very little class time mixed.
Right.
So D1, I think time management is very important. Problem solving is another one, primarily because if you know you're gonna be gone for those 4 or 5 days, not only is time management, you got to problem solve missing a class, an exam, how
Sure.
you make up that exam, that type of thing.
Sure. Excellent. Thanks. Chris?
Sam, you just mentioned the financial aspects of it, and sometimes there are some misconceptions, especially by parents, that there is this unlimited well of scholarship money and resources for their student athlete when they're looking at schools. We know the NCAA restricts you to a certain amount of scholarships, and in some cases, Sam, your conference may restrict you as well. How does Providence deal with it, and what are some of the avenues you do to help supplement the financial aspects of student athletes?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, education is critical. And unfortunately, because at our level we're recruiting earlier and earlier, it becomes a bit more challenging. Now, there's pros and cons with recruiting somebody earlier. The cons is just the obvious. You shouldn't be recruiting someone who's a freshman in high school or, just started their sophomore year. But that's just the landscape at our level right now. The pro is obviously it allows us to educate them a lot earlier than, say, we're speaking to a junior or senior and they haven't taken the core courses and they haven't realized the grades again in freshman year is going to be impacted in an academic decision whether they're admitted or not. So although the recruitment happens early, there are pros because you can advise these student athletes and their parents where maybe they're not getting that education at their club level or from a guidance counselor, so to speak. But there is a misconception about the amount of money that's out there. And sometimes youth players, parents, they feel like it's an investment on return where I'm spending all this money at the youth level. I'm flying my kid to all these showcases and they're hoping there's going to be a return on it. Full scholarships are very rare at our level. We are given the full complement, but it's a situation where there's a lot that goes into it. In other words, giving a partial scholarship, if you're fully complemented, you can't really do a package deal because of the equivalency factor at the NCAA level.
Right.
For us, being at Providence, a strong academic institution, I think recruiting student athletes who excel in the classroom is something that's part of a quality, a characteristic that I look for. So we tend to really go 2 different avenues. We're either athletic or academic, and maybe a combination of the 2, where maybe we're fortunate enough to recruit someone who's not only excelling in the classroom, who is worthy of an academic scholarship, but also worthy of an athletic, and that obviously can help with the cost of attending a private institution, which we all know can be fairly expensive for a family.
And yeah, that's where I think, there is the misconception. We spoke with CJ Maritola, the hockey coach at Sacred Heart. He has 18 full scholarships, or that's what the NCAA allows them. His conference only allows him 14. He has a roster of 27 players, so obviously not every player is going to be able to get full scholarships. NCAA women's soccer is 13, is that correct?
14.
So again, with rosters of 22 and 24 and 26, it's difficult for people to understand. There isn't a full complement or a full financial aid package available for every single player.
Yeah, exactly. And first of all, great interview with him. I listened and I tuned in. It was very well done with all the parties involved. But yeah, I think there is a misconception. I mean, this past year we had kids playing that were either on very little or no money. And again, I think that goes with some of the recruiting cycle of how early it happens, where maybe somebody who was excelling as an athlete, maybe their freshman, sophomore year, but as they grow, kind of don't pan out as you see fit, and maybe somebody else who you thought was going to be a very good recruited walk-on all of a sudden excels and growth takes off. Now with us, there's nothing of that sort where if an institution um, decides to fully support women's soccer, where conferences will restrict what you can use. On the women's side of things, conferences will put just what a minimum standard may be. Not every conference. Some conferences don't have any requirements, but some conference may say you have to be at 12 scholarships, or you have to be at 10, and the school has to, in order to be affiliated within the conference for women's soccer, has to support the program to that extent. They can certainly offer more than that. But for women's soccer, there's nothing where if Providence gives me 14, I can use the 14.
Tackling College Sports was put together, Sam, with Mark and I, with the idea of what about the 99% who haven't been identified, who aren't going to get a college scholarship? How do they get identified in the process later on as maybe a walk-on? And have you given walk-ons money after year one, after year two, once they've proved themselves at that level?
Yes, 100%. I think that's where maybe it comes in from a coach's philosophy. I like to look at us that when you work at the college level, you're not just a coach, you're a teacher, you're also in a leadership position, you're a manager too. For me, it's one of those things where there's something to be said for someone who's put the shirt on, who's gone through training sessions, who's given their best for the program, has been in the weight room, has done extra work. There's something to be said where a coach should be managing their budget, where if someone who is a rising sophomore or junior who was maybe a recruited walk-on, but you know what, has paid their dues and is worthy of it, that you're in a position where you can reward that individual versus the next best thing coming out of high school. And too often, too many times, people just feel like, oh, this kid's going to change my program, but yet they haven't even put the shirt on once. Mm-hmm. So for me, I always like to, whether you want to call it a slushy fund or whatever, I always try not to spend my full complement of scholarships for individuals that, quite frankly, have represented the program and have matched or exceed the expectations. So I think that's more of a coach at the collegiate level doing a good job of managing their budget, because obviously you can't put your hand in your pocket and pull out $5 but expect to buy something that costs $10, Right. So I think if a coach can be very cautious about how they forecast the growth within their program under their tutelage, I mean, that's a reflection of them as a leader, as a coach, as a teacher. Then you can reward individuals that are rising to become a junior or senior. We have that going on currently, where we have an individual where her freshman year was on no athletic scholarship, played significant minutes for the program, did well, even though the team overall didn't do well. This past season, same concept where coming in, I knew she was going to be somebody who, quite frankly, was going to be influential. So we tried giving her a little bit, and she's probably going to be rewarded again, quite frankly, because it's just a situation where it's good to see people grow within your program. And then if there's a way you can reward them, even though they were part of that 99 percentile, now they're going to be rewarded for their efforts and attitude throughout their journey at their institution.
That's great insight. Mark?
Good stuff, Sam. Hey, we're halfway through, believe it or not, and this is a part of the interview where we like to turn things to you and get a little bit more insight about Sam. I know you're a passionate, inspirational type of coach, likes to use quotes, so we're going to ask you, what is your favorite quote?
Oh, man. I have so many favorite quotes.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I do. I think they can really send messages during good and bad times. But one that we instill here, which is the process of maximizing today, is a big one for me. Happiness is a journey, not a destination. I mean, I could go on and on. But for me, that's a big one. The process of maximizing today. I think it's a fitting quote for me because it's a life lesson I learned many, many years ago. And to no fault of nobody, a lot of the times people get caught up in not they look to the future instead of just embracing the moments they have within that given day. And,
Sure.
Let's be honest. I'm not trying to, it's cliche or whatever, but you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So for me, that's something that I try to preach to my team, but I try to practice it as an individual. But I do love quotes. I could go on and on with those types of quotes.
Those were great examples. Next, any books that you can suggest, whether it be on the sport or...
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not a book person. That's probably not something that a college coach should be saying who is
So you're saying we should nix that quote from our coach interviews?
No, you should put it on. I got to be authentic here. I'm not a book person. I'm one of those that, wherever I'm at and, with my current position, I'm beyond thankful for the opportunity and the platform Providence College affords me and my great athletic director and president have given me. But, I wake up every morning and I go to work for my players.
Yeah.
That's who I work for. I don't view it as I work for Providence College. I try to wake up and challenge myself. How can I be better for my players? So with the whole book thing, I feel like if I'm sitting there and I'm just reading a book, I feel like I could be doing something else to make my players, my program better, whether watching film or mapping out a training session or watching a soccer match for professional development. So I'm not a big book person. However, with that being said, when I do read books, I am one that likes to read books about motivation, inspiration, leadership. So I am currently reading a book that's called The Only Way to Win. And I'm in the middle of it because obviously at our level, we're in and out of airports all the time. So
Sure.
On a flight, I'll certainly grab it and take it with me. But it's about how building character can drive higher achievements. But it really focuses on the process versus the outcome. And that's something big that I feel is part of my philosophy as a leader of a collegiate program. So I'm currently reading that, but to all the listeners, I am not a book person. I don't read books. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but I've got to be authentic here and tell everybody the truth.
Got it. No books for Sam for Christmas.
Send me a magazine, though, with cool pictures.
There you go. And then lastly, on the personal question side, are there any web-based sites or tools that you use in your practice or personal life? Like us here, Chris and I rely quite heavily on Evernote, to complete and work on our show here. So anything in that category?
No, not really. Nothing that we gravitate towards to anything we do here. We obviously have different softwares we use, whether to break film or manage our recruiting classes or to manage our team from a communication standpoint. So we have things like that we use more from management or film, but nothing of those sorts.
Okay. And from a recruiting standpoint, same thing?
From a recruiting standpoint, there's a lot of softwares out there right now. That's part of priority for year 2. So we're in talks with. There's so many different recruiting softwares that kind of make things a bit more efficient in terms of when you call a recruit, how to log it and
Sure.
evaluation. So we're in the process of speaking with a few different softwares that would handle that field, and we hopefully look to make a decision on which company we'll use over the summer.
Great. Chris?
Sam, the college game's come a long way since you and I have played, and not just from the physical aspects, but the way the game is played, the systems of play. Are you guys presently using sports psychologists? Are you using a strength and conditioning coach? And what kind of experiences have you found with those?
Yeah, yes to all of it, and the more the better. For me, I'm one piece of the puzzle, so I can't certainly begin to act like I have all the answers to everything that's going to go into making a player certainly more successful within the confines of the group. But we do have a sports psychologist that works with the group. We do have a strength and conditioning staff that works with the group. We have a sports nutritionist that works with the group. We obviously have our sports medicine department that works with our group, where we have an athletic trainer who's assigned to our team full time. We have an academic coordinator that's assigned to our group. So we have a lot of different voices within our program that specialize in a certain field. I think those things are extremely important. The game has obviously changed, as you know, at all the levels. It's faster, it's more competitive, especially the female athlete has become stronger, quicker, more driven. There's still differences in the male and the female game. But I think all those are important. We do a significant amount of education in terms of off the field growth with recovery, rest, the amount of sleep leading up to a game, the type of nutrition leading up to a game, certainly at halftime, after a game. And we, as a staff, myself and my staff, sit down with those different areas of people, and we really map out where we're trying to get to, and how does it complement what we're doing. That's become big now at our level, and I'm fortunate enough to have some great people in those areas here at Providence College.
You mentioned rest, and that's something that we had CJ Maritol on, as I said, on our first podcast. You know, there's a lot of parents and there's a lot of student athletes who think they need to play 12 months a year. They need to train 12 months a year, whether it's with the weights off the field, whether it's going to, foot skill clinics, working with a personal trainer, constantly playing the sport. How much emphasis is there now on the rest factor?
With me, it's huge. It's huge, especially during the main season, our traditional season in the fall. For me, during the fall, it's more of a management, it's more of a recovery, more of a preparation. You're not getting too much coaching done during that. You're trying to figure out what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of your opponent, what is your identity as a team so you can maximize it. But the reality when you're playing a midweek game and then a weekend game, the college landscape right now, it's not a healthy one. It's not a positive one because it's too many games crammed in a season. The college season for me is not a marathon, but it's not a sprint. It's an accelerated sprint. So you certainly want to get off to a good start, not a great start. You get off to too fast of a start, you don't have nothing left in the tank at the end of the season. But if you get off to too slow of a start, you may have already fallen too far behind. You want to get off to just a good enough start where you get momentum during the season and you finish off strong. You're in a position at the end of the season to do well. So I think rest plays a massive factor to that. There's obviously other things that play a factor to that. Your non-traditional training and building up and progressing. The best way to explain people and to their defense, they're not educated at the youth or high school levels unless you're playing for a club coach who spends enough time talking about it. Mm-hmm. It's like taking a car. And if you start your car up and just get in it and go 100 miles an hour every single day straight, that car's going to break down. It needs rest. It needs maintenance. Well, a player is the same thing. I always like to say quality over quantity. And it's the same thing. Like how many times you see someone running practice sessions that go for 2.5 hours, but yet a match is 90 minutes.
Right.
Why are you running a practice for 2.5 hours? You can't expect your players to be at optimal performance on game day if the progression leading up to it has just been high intensity and you've been taxing them the whole time. So to me, quality over quantity is extremely important and should be a message across the board, as well as less is more.
Right.
So I'm not really sure what the answer is at the youth level because especially a kid who's playing high school in, let's say, the Northeast, they're going from August until November, and then club soccer goes from November till July.
Right.
I think when I was at the youth level, one of the things that I was trying to instill was trying to take December, January, and half of February off during the holidays, because there's that two and a half, maybe 2 months off where you just let the kid mentally and physically get away from the game. But it's tough, and I'm not sure there's a clear-cut answer unless someone is just a sport specific to soccer, doesn't play any other sports, and is committed to believing in what their coach, their director is trying to preach.
There's a movement at the NCAA level for Division I, Sam, for a split season that would have 9 or 10 games in the fall portion and 9 or 10 games in the spring segment as well. It's picking up steam. It's having a little bit of problems and hurdles with the athletic directors and administration, but obviously from what you have said here, it's probably something that you support.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, no hesitation whatsoever. I would support that. Now, look, in theory, it's great, but there's challenges. Don't get me wrong, because an athletic department doesn't just have to worry about soccer all year round. They've got to worry about field hockey. They got to worry about lacrosse. There's factors that go into scheduling. There's factors that go into based on what part of the country your institution plays in, weather, facility, grass versus turf, the ability to have that facility available during difficult conditions. Like for us right now, that current structure would probably be challenging with the type of winter we had. But when you look at it and you compare Model A, the current model, to the proposed Model B, if you're a soccer purist and you're all about the experience of your student athletes as well as the health and safety, how do you not support it if you're at an institution that can put a calendar like that based on the resources you have? Just think about it. The ability to train for a week and have a match on the weekend. Use school as an analogy. It's like I'm the teacher and I have my class, and on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm teaching them chapters 1 through 4. I'm giving them some assignments to do some extra work on their own, and come Friday, test day. Well, that would be the same. We would be able to now have a progression where we're saying, look, on Friday, we've got a match. Here's some of the things we're going to have to do as part of our identity, and you're working on Monday through Thursday, and now you can sit back on Friday and let them take the test and see how they do. You give them a day or two to recover, and you start the process all over again next week. I think the experiences would be better, the rewards would be better, the development would be better. It would be a true Division I experience. Right now, the current model, we play 4 or 5 games before school's even in session. Let's be honest, some administrators are probably still on vacation. So we're playing 4 or 5 games in August. We report first week in August. It's, you've got still updates going on in the campus in terms of facility upgrades and stuff. There's no school spirit. It's not like you don't feel like you're a part of something. And then by the time you hit October, your season could be over, and you've only been 6-7 weeks into school. You have 8 months with nothing. So we just finished talking about youth playing 12 months. So here's a youth player that's playing 12 months, and now they go to college, and if they're on a program that's not very good, they're playing 2.5-3 months at best, unless they're part of a program that's playing more than 18 games, meaning they qualify for their conference tournament, they're in the NCAA tournament. So, I think people are going to be against it from a logistic standpoint, facilities, weather. But then I think you're going to have people that are going to be against it because the current structure fits them. They're successful under the current structure.
Would you say that's coaches as well, Sam?
Yeah, I would say coaches for sure, because I think at the end of the day, we're at our level, we're in a business of winning, and no one's going to keep their job if they're 0-14-4. Let's just be honest. I mean, you're failing, so I think it is a business of winning at our level. For me, I support that. I preach that, but it's, for me, the process of winning, not as just an athlete, but as a student and socially at the game of life. But I think you're going to have coaches that are going to be against it because the current model allows them to be really successful. I think certain coaches may be against it for maybe financial reasons, because they can do the college level, but then they really need to do the youth level. And they need that financial income. They need to coach youth sports. And quite frankly, just because I'm honest, you're probably going to have some coaches going to be against it because they wouldn't know what to do to map out a whole year curriculum. I mean, let's just call it how it is. But if you're a purist and you are at an institution that can support the new proposed model, I can't see how you wouldn't support it. But I think it's ways away if it even happens. I think there's just administrators and presidents that I just don't know if soccer's too high of a priority, or they're willing to do a lot of some of the other spending that it would cost to make it a reality. So, but it is getting legs, and it's great.
From a student-athlete well-being standpoint, it makes tons of sense, in my opinion. Obviously, from a collegiate retention aspect, it makes tons of sense. And obviously, from an academic standpoint, where players are in class a lot more, as opposed to that Wednesday through Sunday trip that you spoke of, I think it makes sense that way as well.
Yeah, and absolutely. And think about now the things they could get involved with on campus with other clubs and other things of that nature where they can be more involved within the community of their institution. So the obvious reasons are there. No one can argue that it would be better from an academic success standpoint, a health and safety standpoint, where, typically you should get 72 hours now before you play another match. It's not even 48 anymore. So yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer, but there are challenges, and that's the reality of it, and I realize those. So, but I think it would also open up the opportunity for these student athletes to experience other things that, quite frankly, they wouldn't be able to do with the current model.
As far as recruiting is concerned, in that model, Sam, are teams built for the sprint of college soccer as opposed to what could be the marathon of college soccer?
The current teams?
Yeah.
I think it depends on what institution you're at. I think at the Division I level, if you're comparing a women's team versus a male's team, like you look at Providence men's soccer who went to the Final Four. I think on the men's side, there's more parity, where on the women's side, you go look at maybe the last 10 years, I don't think there's been a non-BCS school in the Final Four.
Yeah, right. You saw UMBC go to the Final Eight in men's soccer this year.
Yeah, and I think the Big East had 3 teams in the Elite Eight. So obviously a non-football conference. So there's more parity. But like this year, Pepperdine, which is a non-BCS school, made it to the Elite Eight. The days of Santa Clara would make those runs. I mean, they didn't even get into the tournament this year. Certainly maybe debatable whether they should have been or not. But I think that the current structure is certain programs where I would say the resources and the depth, where they're getting an 18th, 19th kid that would probably be in the starting 11 at other Division I schools. Those programs are built for the accelerated sprint, where other programs, based on the lack of depth or maybe the ability from the staff to manage the program better, would probably be built better for the marathon. You got to find your niche. That's you, and at the end of the day, the structure is what it is, and you've got to try to be as successful as you can within it.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Great discussion, guys. Let's turn back to the student athlete, and the reason why, as Chris pointed out, we do this podcast is to really educate them as well as their parents. What is the best way for the student athlete to contact a prospective coach, and when should that process begin?
Yeah, great question. And I think first, it's them that should be doing the contact,
not the parent.
Not the parent. The student is the one that's going into the institution. So I think the student, the prospective recruit, has to be initiating the emails. Now, I was doing a college prep seminar the other day, and the parents said, well, it's kind of hard for a freshman in high school to know how to write an email. Fair point. But you've got to adapt, and you've got to adjust, and you've got to educate. So I think the parent can certainly be involved in educating on what the things should be stated within the email. Hopefully that's happening at the club level, and hopefully it's happening early at the club level, because the times have changed where you used to do college prep seminars for juniors and seniors, but you got to start doing them for 9th and 10th graders. And in terms of when they should start it, you got to adapt again. It's happening earlier and earlier, so it's never too soon, in my opinion. The earlier the better. And I think the email's got to come from them. It's got to be simple and to the point. It's got to have the necessary information that an institution, a coach that's receiving that email, knows a little bit about them, not only from academics, who they play for, where they're from, but it also allows them to know from an NCAA standpoint what they're allowed to do. So I think the subject should include their name and their year of graduation. And I think the body of the email should just include a brief introduction, who they are, where they're from, what school they play for, what upcoming events they have coming up, and certainly list a coach or two that we can reach out to, especially if they're a freshman or sophomore and we're not allowed to reach out to them. I always tell recruits, and/or when I'm at these college prep seminars I speak to, they must recruit the coach as much as they expect to be recruited. I mean, if that's one thing we can get out of the podcast for any prospective student athlete, any parent that listens or whatever the case may be, recruit the school as much as you expect to be recruited. It's a two-way street. And just little things. I mean, again, just because I'm honest, I'll be frank here. Don't have a kid send an email where it's signed by the kid, but the email address clearly states the father's name. It's like, create your own email, and don't just send an email to a school and then you forward it and then you forget to replace the institution's name with the new institution's name. Like, take the time to show that you're truly interested in the program as much as you expect them to be truly interested and put the time into you. But recruit them as much as you expect to be recruited.
And it's really a part of becoming an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that, these kids, at some point, the parents have to trust that the education, the mentorship that they've done leading up to when they graduate from high school and enter the new chapter in their life, that they've done a good job, that their daughter or son are prepared to enter the college world. And for me, I think when you enter the college world, well, let's be honest, if all three of us could go back to college, we'd do it today. I mean, it was the best time of our lives. You know what I mean?
Best 7 years of my life, Sam.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. I was pushing 6.5, but I didn't want to trump you. So, but I just think, like, it's the best time of your life. You're going to enter this highly touted player, this girl, so to speak, excited, nervous. But you hope that the journey along the way, when you look back, you can say, I gave to that program as much as it gave to me. And now I'm this young adult woman ready for the next chapter. And the only way that's going to happen is if the parents kind of let go of the leash a little bit and let them and trust the parenting that they've done and allow them to take this next step.
Sure. So when I'm on the sideline watching my daughter's games, oftentimes you'll hear parents talk about video. Have you taken video yet of your daughter? What service you're using? What process you're using? Can you speak? Is that something that needs to be done? Do coaches actually want that sent to them?
I'm going to quote one of the most funniest individuals.
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say.
I'm going this with Senor Legates. I'm going to quote one of the funniest individuals back in the day when I was starting this profession, which I'm truly blessed and thankful for it. I love it every day. And we were doing a similar college prep seminar at a summer camp, and they asked the question of video, and this individual goes, listen, if you're gonna send me a video and you have music, you better make sure it's music I like listening to, or it's going right in the trash pile. Oh man, and obviously I didn't say it in the manner that he did, but I almost fell off my chair dying laughing. It was hilarious.
I remember it well, man. I remember it so well.
Yeah, it was at collegiate soccer camp. It was, with some great people. We had so much fun, and I think that's one of the cool things about our profession. You meet so many great people. But I think with the video, first, and I'll apologize to any of the listeners who maybe have this as a profession or a job and do it on the side. I think video is to pay for someone to do a video highlight of you. I don't think that's unless you're financially able to pay for it and it doesn't really dent your pocket, do it. But I'm not in favor of videos. I'll never make a decision on a video. For me, I think it's borderline just being lazy. There's unique challenges, certainly, where if maybe a kid on the West Coast is looking at us and we don't have an opportunity to go watch them. But with all the events that go on, with all the planning that's done in advance, with all these ID clinics, I don't think there's a reason for a domestic kid to be made a decision on a video. Now, with that being said, if someone is going to do a video and they're just pro video, no matter how many times us three say you shouldn't do a video and you blew in the face, they think it's great, I would just simply, again, make sure it just is a reflection of who they are, but it's got to have substance. For example, don't have a center mid with the ball doing all this great stuff, makes this pass, and it just keeps the camera on the center mid. Like, show what was the end product of it.
The whole development, yeah.
Did it get to the person? Maybe they didn't see the right decision. There's a reason why it's called a highlight video. How many people are going to put a highlight video together where they're showing them making a mistake, right?
Sure.
To me, I hardly ever look at a video. I will only if I have a coach or a good friend of mine or someone who's saying, look, take a look at this kid. And I'll look at it, but it's really just to determine whether or not I'm interested to go watch them live. But for me personally, I won't make a decision on somebody unless I watch them live.
So for the parents out there and the student athletes out there, the bottom line really, and we've heard this from CJ as well, is save your money.
Yeah, I think everyone is at a different place financially. So if you're a family where the finances is really irrelevant, yeah, the more you do it, the better, because it's kind of going hand what I'm saying, recruit them as much as you expect to be recruited. But I just think that there's a plethora of other opportunities to be recruited in different ways other than just relying on a video. That's called a highlight video. Let's be honest. It's called a highlight video for a reason.
Right. And then you've got that possibility where you send that to a coach who enjoys rock and you've placed it to Britney Spears.
Yeah, as my friend Mr. Joe Barossa would say, trash barrel, ding.
Such a great guy. So great.
Yeah,
I love that story.
Awesome, man. Awesome guy, great personality. I laughed a ton, man. Oh my God, he was the funniest individual, and I haven't seen him in a long time, but he was a lot of fun during those summer camps.
Okay, so that we just covered the best ways. How about worst ways for athletes to contact coaches? Have you had any experiences where this whoever the individual was, student athlete or parent, was just god awful?
Yeah, I mean, you get those all the time, and for respect to those people, you don't really want to go into it. But I think to their defense, maybe it's just a lack of education on the process, hitting the panic button. Sees the time is ticking. Maybe she's on a team where a lot of her teammates are being committed and doesn't see any options coming in. Look, I'm not a parent yet. Obviously, you two guys are parents, and I'm sure you're great fathers, and hopefully I can be somewhat of a great parent if I'm fortunate enough to have kids. But so I can't relate to what it's like to be going through the process with a daughter or a son. But with that being said, I mean, every parent's going to think their kid is the greatest thing since sliced bread, so the worst that a parent could do is be like, oh, I'm telling you, she's good. You'll love her, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you've got resources that should be doing that for you if your daughter or son is not up to that maturity yet. You got directors, you got club coaches. The parent should really just support their son or daughter. That's it. They have to be involved in the process, but don't dominate the conversation on visits. Don't pick up the phone and call and say, if my daughter knew, she'd kill me. Then if you know that, you shouldn't be doing it. Don't be emailing the coaches. I think they should support their son or daughter in the process, no different than they would support their son or daughter with anything else they're going through. Whether it's school, who they're going to the prom with, going out, whatever the case may be. I personally, when it gets to that point when we have recruits visit, I do put some time aside to meet with the parents away from the prospective student athlete, primarily because I don't want, when I am with the recruit, for the conversation to be dominated by the parent, as well as I also am realistic that the parent may have some things they want to talk about that maybe they too are not comfortable talking about in front of their daughter. So when we organize the visit, we spend some time with the parents when the recruit is with the players.
Okay, got it. So it's getting a little bit late. We're going to wrap up a bit here, but we've got one more question that Chris is going to take. And I think at some point we touched upon this topic with CJ Maritolo. I think we're going to wind up doing a whole podcast session on this, and that happens to be around social media. Chris?
Yeah, just to kind of go back to one of Sam's points that he just mentioned, I've gotten emails before that are addressed to the wrong coach and mentioning the wrong institution, and I know, Sam, you've probably gotten those along the way as well.
Oh, I get them all the time, and it's the best way to filter through your inbox. You just delete it. I mean, that's 100%. I mean, right now I have over 200 emails in my inbox. And anyone who's listening, don't call my office line. I never answer it unless it's an inter-office call. So, those emails, Chris, it's the best way when on your to-do list. You say you got to filter through emails. You can just delete a lot of them real quick.
It's simple.
My case said, "Dear Coach Lopes, I'd like to come to Providence." I said, "Yeah, I want that kid to come and play for me." So I took her away from you, Sam. Sorry.
Hey, that's all right. Friends who care, friends who share. You know what I mean?
Well, let me get back to the question that Mark was speaking about. there are so many obstacles facing student athletes these days on collegiate campuses. What can you speak of to social media, time management, things of that nature?
I think time management is the biggest thing, right? Let's just think about it. They go from all this structure in high school, and then there's really no structure in college in terms of classes, right? High school, you wake up, mom and dad probably wake you up because you just don't want to get out of bed. You ignore the alarm, you have breakfast, you go to class, lunch, class. Maybe you do an extra school activity, you come home, have an early dinner, you go to youth practice. With college, you may have a class at 9, then you don't have another one till 1, then you have practice at 3:30, and then you have an exam. So time management to me is massive, and we do things with our incoming players that helps build a bridge, not micromanage them, but help build a bridge where they map out their semester, map out their month, their weekly, learn how to put to-do lists together. So time management is big. The social media is a whole nother avenue. I mean, we all have social media. I mean, I'm getting caught up with Instagram right now, but Snapchat's taken off. Like by the time I get caught up with one, the next best thing is coming up, so I'm not educated or well-versed with it by any means. We try to educate all of them that's part of the philosophy here in terms of winning, winning on the field, winning in the classroom, but then winning socially. They have to understand as a student athlete, which I think helps them once they enter the real world, is that you're in the light. It's a lot of great experiences. You get to visit a lot of great cities. The rewards are awesome, but there's a responsibility with how you carry yourself. Currently, these recruits are a reflection of themselves and their family, but then when they enter the program, they're a reflection of the program. And they're not going to say, John Doe did so-and-so. They're going to say, the girl on St. Joseph's College team did X, Y, and Z. That's all they see is the college's name. And it could be anything. It could be the type of language they use, an inappropriate picture. So we try to educate them that it's something that if the whole world was watching, would you still do it? If everybody could see it, no matter what the privacy settings are, because those things are it's no such thing as privacy settings. If the whole world could see what you post, what you put on a picture, or a future employer is going to sit you down about an interview, and they were to see all this stuff that you choose to do on social media, how does it reflect you? So we are constantly educating them. We all have social media. So this isn't something that I'm preaching that I don't practice. I can't go on social media and post things that doesn't reflect me and certainly the institution I work for. I'm going to show up Monday and the keys to my office isn't going to work. So social media is taken off. I'll be honest, I'm glad it didn't exist when I was in college because I'd be in a lot of trouble.
We just said this weekend, Mark and I.
We always say that.
I just think like it's crazy. I mean, when I went to college, I had a cell phone cell phones were just getting big, like, Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell back in the day. I mean, those things were like you needed a backpack to carry a cell phone around, So I think social media can be very dangerous, but I think social media can also be very useful. It can also promote the great things that are going on, not only with the players and the programs. We use it a lot to promote our program. I use it a lot to promote my program because it's an honor to be affiliated with Providence and lead of this program. Websites nowadays tend to be just a quick release about what's going on. I think social media can really give people a behind the scenes of what it's like to be a part of that program, but it can also be very dangerous.
And to piggyback on your ideas of promotion, www.samlopesacademy.com. Talk a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, it was just something that I knew when I got to a certain institution where I felt it was home to me. It was my dream institution. Like I want to be here for years to come. That's just my opinion. Whether or not that's a shared opinion down the road, who knows? But if I could hit the fast forward button in 15 years from now, say I still want to be at Providence, this is where I want to be. So whenever I got to that particular institution where I knew it was going to be home for me, I wanted to also start doing more and offer the community more. So we do a lot of different things for youth players. We do a lot of things for prospective student athletes to educate them about the college process. A lot of the things that we're talking about, it certainly allows them to get on campus and see what Providence has to offer within the rules of NCAA. But I'm also big on leadership. I don't have captains on my team. I don't believe in captains. I believe everybody's a leader in their own right. And I don't think I should be molding 2 individuals to be a captain. I think I should be molding 20 some odd people to be good leaders. So we want to start doing leadership seminars as well, where we get not me, but other people that come in under the umbrella of the academy. And we also want to start doing coaching education clinics as well. Things where we target more like high school youth coaches, like, for example, at the high school level, who just played a match on a Thursday but are running a 2-hour practice on a Friday. And that's not for everybody if the hat fits wear it, but we want to do things where we kind of give them behind the scenes. Look, we're playing this match on Sunday. This is what we did all week, just to give them an idea of progression and things like that. So it allows me to give more to the game that's given a lot to me, instead of just doing a lot for just the current program. So we're motivated by it.
It's awesome. My friend, thank you so much for the last hour. We will continue this conversation on the golf course, you, me, and Mark and Tony Horta. And it's really been an honor and a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, listen, this is awesome what you guys are doing. You guys are 2 funny characters, so anybody who has an opportunity to spend an hour or so with you would be a well-spent hour. I think what you guys are doing in terms of educating parents, where to their defense sometimes don't have these resources, is awesome. And I certainly look forward to the golf course, but 2 things. 1, Mr. Senor Horta's got to pick up the tab, and 2, the conversations could only continue in the woods because half the time I'd be in there looking for my ball. So.
Sam, thanks again. And listen, I want to give the listeners an opportunity to be able to contact you. You have, I know, a Twitter account and also your email. Do you mind giving that out to us?
Yeah, my email is obviously just slopes1@providence.edu. And then both my Twitter and my Instagram account is PC_Coach Lopes. Certainly follow all those types of things. Do primary accounts are specifically to kind of promote all the great things happening within our program, but certainly within the game, because obviously, I follow the game and I'm a fan too. I'm just not a coach.
Excellent. Well, again, we appreciate it. It was a great interview full with tons of great, useful information. And that wraps up session number 3. Thanks for listening to the Tackling College Sports podcast. Remember that you can follow us on Instagram now, TCS Nation, on Facebook at facebook.com/Tackling College Sports, Twitter at TCS Nation, online at tcsnation.com. Thanks so much. And lastly, as promised, on Facebook, we are thanking 2 listeners that were kind enough to leave a review on our second session with CJ Maritola. Thanks to CH813 and J Coach P for their brilliant reviews. Thanks, and until then, be your best.
Be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.